Good evening, Crime Talk aficionados. My name is Scott Reisch, and this is Crime Talk, the most fact-driven, unbiased true crime channel. Often imitated these days, but never duplicated. All right, let's go over a quick docket this evening since we weren't able to do one today. First, the Murdaugh or Murdaugh case. Who is Gloria Satterfield? And then, is there a question about who really killed Molly Tibbetts? This is kind of crazy. And then finally, our dumb criminal contestant of the day. Let's talk about it. All right. So it was one of those days. Let's just put it that way. A busy day in a good way. And so that's why I wasn't able to put up even a short abbreviated video today. So I apologize. Sometimes the practice of law gets in the way of doing fun things like Crime Talk. Anyway, let's get to it. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Now, for those of you who have never joined us, like I said, my name is Scott Reisch. I'm a practicing criminal defense attorney going on my 26th year of handling criminal defense cases. So when I'm telling you what I think is happening or what rules of evidence and procedure is taking place, it's not from me guessing it, what it is, or just taking it from a newspaper article. It's from practical experience. I have handled thousands and thousands of cases over the years in both state and federal court, as well as military tribunals, courts martials, and that's both as a private attorney as well as a judge advocate in the Marine Corps. So when I'm speaking to you, it's coming from practical experience that goes on even to this day. So the reason why we started this channel, and can you believe somebody told me today, is that really right? Three years from the date we put up our first Crime Talk video. Can you believe it? Wow, that's gone fast. And when I go back and look at some of our first videos, I just kind of sit there and cringe a little bit because it was so badly produced. The audio sucked. But like everything that we do in life, we try to get better at it every time we do it. That's kind of what being a professional is. You go out there and always doing better. There's no such thing as perfect. You're always striving to do better. So let's get to the docket today. All right, the Paul and Maggie Murdaugh case. Now, I have had several people send me messages stating that I am mispronouncing Paul and Maggie's last name. Now, I see it as spelled as Murdaugh. I pronounce that Murdaugh. I've been told it's pronounced Murdaugh or even Murdaugh. So I'm going to do some research tomorrow. I'm going to call friends that live in South Carolina, in the vicinity of where all of this tragedy has taken place, and I am going to get the correct and accurate pronunciation. Certainly we try to get it right, but man, I'm telling you, some of these names, you look at it, you do your best, and people are like, oh yeah, that's wrong, Scott. And I think I've mentioned this story before, okay? And this is just completely sums up my experience with names. I'm just going to apologize in advance that we're probably going to get it incorrect. And even on the Murdaugh thing, I've watched video of news channels in South Carolina, and they're saying Murdaugh. I didn't hear him say Murdaugh at all. And they live there. So tomorrow we'll have the correct pronunciation. I will contact attorney friends in the area to make sure how that is. But just a quick story. Years ago, it was voir dire, and one of the jurors' names, Smith. How difficult could that possibly be, right? The juror didn't correct the judge when pronounced it as Smith, didn't correct the prosecutor when the juror was called Juror Smith. No, but I get up there and said, well, juror number, Smith, what are your thoughts? And they corrected me and said, well, actually, it's pronounced Smythe. I was like, are you kidding me? Really? You didn't correct the judge, you didn't correct the prosecutor, but you correct me. And that just goes to show you, no matter how you think it is spelled, the only correct way to pronounce it is the correct way that the individuals are pronouncing it. And spelling, obviously, is never going to always get you the right way. You just never know. Anyway, all right, little digression there. So Paul and Maggie Murdaugh, they were both shot and killed back on June 7th of this year. And Paul Murdaugh was on trial for the death of Mallory Beach. She was a friend because it was alleged that Paul was the driver of a vehicle, a boat at the time, not a vehicle, but a boat. And apparently they'd been drinking all day, hitting sandbars out on the river in the low country down there. If you're familiar with that, when the tides come in, come out, there's sandbars out there. People go and they party on them. They had gone to another bar, another liquor store, and they were heading back. And apparently, according to some statements given in depositions, that Paul Murdaugh hit the gas on the boat. And if anyone's familiar with the boat that they were on, you hit the gas, the front end's going to rise up. And, if you're not, you could lose your balance quite easily if you weren't prepared for it. Well, and you can certainly lose your balance and even possibly be thrown from the boat if you happen to hit a bridge. And that's what happened. And there's been allegations that because of who Paul Murdaugh is and his father, really who his father is and his grandfather and great-grandfather, who've all been prosecutors in this area for like the last 87 to 90 years, that they have some sway when it comes to police investigations. And some individuals that were on that boat were saying that the police kind of didn't do a good job, and a lot of people think that maybe it was done intentionally because the young Murdaugh was the one that was being accused. There was another young man on the boat, Mr. Cook, who says that he was, in fact, basically being accused that he was the driver when, in fact, he was not. And he's part of this lawsuit as well that's ongoing in regards to that. Now, obviously, the criminal case went away when Paul Murdaugh was killed, so there's nothing more to be done there. But the Attorney General's office has opened up an investigation to look into whether there was some favoritism or maybe they kind of stalled the investigation, did a sloppy job in an effort to help the Murdaugh family. Now, nothing's been proven. That's a lot of allegations being made, and we don't know the truth or validity to that. It appears from the 911 call shortly after the boat accident that even the dispatchers didn't know exactly where to go, and they didn't know who was driving. And if you've been to that area, there's a lot of marshland out there, and when it's dark out there. It's not like they light this place up. So it's interesting case. But then, while they're investigating the death of Paul and Maggie, the police tow a vehicle, one of many on the property, and they believe that that vehicle may have been involved in regards to another death. And that was the death of Stephen Smith. Now, his body was found under some unusual circumstances out on a road in Hampton County, which is in South Carolina. And that goes back to June 8th of 2015. All right. Now, they kind of determined, they being the police, the state patrol, kind of thought it was, maybe we'll say it's a hit and run. But nothing really added up as it relates to the physical evidence that would be consistent with a hit and run. And they basically couldn't, make any final conclusions. But there were a lot of people that kept telling the investigators that they thought that the brother of Paul Murdaugh, a guy, and he goes by Buster Murdaugh, there were allegations that Stephen Smith and Buster Murdaugh were somehow romantically involved. And it was no, what's the word I'm looking for? It was no secret that Stephen Smith was gay, and he was very proud of that, and everybody kind of knew it. But apparently, and I don't know what Mr. Buster Murdaugh's orientations are, but that's the allegations, and it kept coming up. And we played some of the audio for you in yesterday's video. And it was interesting because at that point, some of the investigators were like, I understand these Murdaughs are all highfalutin down there in Hampton County, but I'm up here in Charleston, and frankly, this name doesn't mean much of anything to me, so I'm just looking for the truth. So in that particular case, the vehicle is towed, and they're reopening the investigation in regards to the death of Stephen Smith because of information, things of evidentiary value that they found at the Murdaugh property there in South Carolina. Like, wow. Okay. It just keeps it coming, so to speak. But then what is even more interesting is that there is kind of a question of who is this Gloria Satterfield, okay? And hopefully we pronounced her name correctly as well. So Miss Satterfield, Gloria Satterfield, was the maid or the housekeeper for the Murdaughs. Now, she died in 2018 due to a trip and fall. And that's according to records that were basically produced upon her death. The other interesting thing is that as it relates to Miss Satterfield, Paul Murdaugh's father had settled a wrongful death claim in the trip and fall case. Now, that's kind of interesting that you would settle a slip and fall. We've all seen the case where somebody slips on the ice, not that much ice in South Carolina, maybe a little bit of, depending on the time of the year, and you settle a wrongful death claim. That's very odd. So it's been reported that Richard, that's Paul's father, was the only defendant named in the settlement, and his insurance company settled for $500,000 for the wrongful death, and they paid another $5,000 in what's referred to as med pay for medical payments for the accident. But there's no record as to how the accident took place and why was Richard named in regards to the death of Miss Satterfield. So a lot of people are really starting to wonder what the heck is going on with this family down there. Like I said, it sounds like, a dynasty kind of thing where, you have this powerful family. The patriarch of the family passes away. A couple days after his, grandson is killed, and they've all been prosecutors, and they've, can you just see how this would play out in a made-for-TV movie? Oh yeah, that's the old prosecutor's kid. Let's see what we can do. Can't have any problems. Oh, I better call him first before we call anybody else. I mean, just the kind of wheelings and dealings, kind of the good old boys club. And I'm not saying that's what took place. I'm just saying there's a lot of questions, and it seems like the Murdaughs may have had a very, very busy family life with lots of trials and tribulations. And, there's very little doubt, I think, that Paul, on the night that he had his little boat accident, was intoxicated, and his friends described him as basically a different person, or different personality would come out. I think they referred to him as Timothy. When he started to drink, he apparently was just a different person. He became very angry, thought he was invincible. We've all seen those kinds of individuals. When they're drunk, they think they can, they're invincible, and they do stupid stuff. And, hey, when the family gets in trouble, and it always seems to be taken care of, people start to think that they're Teflon and they can't get caught. So now we have the Gloria Satterfield issue brought back as it relates to the Murdaughs. Then we have the Stephen Smith case reopened in light of items of new evidentiary value in that matter. But we still have no new information, no leads apparently, as it relates to who is responsible for the death of Paul and Maggie. We do know Paul had been shot at a close range with a shotgun in the chest and the head, and Maggie was shot in a rifle, maybe indicating that there were at least two different people, maybe one person holding two different weapons. It's unclear. And so far, nobody has any real leads. At least they're not telling us about those leads, and us referring to the general public. But I would like to know. I hope they solve this case soon because it's rather interesting. And I remember when that case happened. I think we covered briefly. There was this accident, powerful family, young kid gets in trouble kind of thing. But really didn't take it too far. But I thought that, we'll see. But now that all this stuff is coming on, and, like I said, I love South Carolina, okay? South Carolina is my adopted home. When I was stationed in the military, I was stationed down in the Low Country, right in this little area where all this took place. I obviously didn't get to see that because I was in the military. I didn't run in those circles, so to speak. But I love the area. I love the people. But there was definitely a good old boys club. That's from what I could tell, from what I was told. But I didn't know the extent of it because I just never got to experience that for sure. But I do remember I had a couple of friends that, they set up shop after they got out of the military in that area. And they had, a mentor basically out there that knew everybody. And, he was just the epitome of a Southern gentleman, knew everybody in town, had represented just about everybody in town or their kid for something. And, he introduced my friends, to everybody in town, and he gave them the seal of approval. I mean, that happens in lots of places, but obviously it's much more difficult when you're in a much smaller community. I wasn't there, but I had a friend they had a program where Marine judge advocates could go into town and assist with divorces for young Marines that were getting divorced. And they were doing some sort of docket call, and one attorney wasn't there late. And he said it was like popcorn. Oh, the attorney was there. Well, you know what? I went to law school with this particular attorney, and if he is not here, I think there must be an emergency because that is not like him. Another attorney said, I vouch for him as well. He was no disrespect to the court, there must be an emergency that's taken place. I went to the Citadel with him and blah, blah. And I said, well, all right, we'll pass the case. Anybody else that probably would have been, held in contempt and, embarrassed or something along those lines. Now, that happens in today's courtrooms everywhere, but at the time I just thought that I heard that story and I'm like, well, that's interesting now, isn't it? But that's just the way it is. But this is going to be an interesting case. All right, the other case on the docket today, Molly Tibbetts. Remember this trial wrapped up, was it last month? Or maybe it was even May. It goes by so fast. Anyway, a Christian Bahena Rivera. He was accused of and convicted of the murder of Molly Tibbetts. She was a college student, and Mr. Rivera got up on the stand and told this almost unbelievable story about basically some guys kidnapping him, making him go and get Molly Tibbetts. They see her running. Apparently they were going to use her some sort of sex trafficking thing. And then ultimately she was, killed, and he was basically told to dispose of the body. And everybody was like, really? Is that your story and you're sticking to it? Well, that's not going to be very believable. And I think the jury came back in, 5 hours or something, found him guilty. of all accounts in which he was charged and related to the death of Molly Tibbetts. Well, wait, there's more. And I hate to sound like, somebody that can just, I don't want to say like fall for anything or like, the most bizarre things. But I'm telling you, I've had clients sometimes tell me the most bizarre story that you just think, no way. There's no way this could possibly happen. You are lying to me. And then you start investigating it. You start doing what you have to do on a criminal case, and you go out and investigate it. And then you're just thinking, oh my God, this may be absolutely true. And I've seen it come out where the most bizarre, unusual stories later turn out to be true. So the judge in the Molly Tibbetts case has set a hearing, and it's in regards to a motion for a new trial that was filed by the defense in this particular case. And what is allegedly happening here is that there were a couple of witnesses, and they were in custody, and they're saying that they had a conversation with a different man who bragged about his role in killing Molly Tibbetts and blaming the crime on a young Hispanic man. Now, both the witnesses are unknown to each other, yet they both independently identified the same suspect to authorities after Rivera testified in his own defense on May 26, which is the day he testified in his trial. Now, his attorneys are seeking a new trial for him, for Mr. Rivera. Now, the identity of this guy that bragged about it hasn't been revealed, but Judge Yates, who was the judge in this case, presiding over the case, granted a defense motion for one of them, an inmate in an Iowa prison, to testify at Rivera's sentencing hearing, which is set for Thursday. And prosecutors obviously are dismissing this, saying, you can't, this is just a weak claim. Mr. Rivera had his day in court. If the defense was going to call these witnesses, then they should have done so. Well, the problem is the defense is saying they didn't know about it because these two individuals, the prisoners, will testify that when they were housed at a county jail, another inmate told them that Tibbetts had been kidnapped by associates and held at a trap house for sex trafficking, where she was apparently bound and gagged, and that's all according to the defense motion. And apparently this inmate will say that another person is the one who killed Tibbetts, and the publicity surrounding her disappearance got too big, and that they dumped her body near a Hispanic male in order to make it appear that the Hispanic male committed the crime. And these individuals, the witnesses, the witness and one of the witnesses told a prison official and investigators that he thought the story was bluster until he heard Bahena Rivera's testimony. The second new witness came forward to a local sheriff's office claiming she was in a car with the same man a month earlier when he pulled a pistol out and said that Mexican shouldn't be in jail for killing Molly Tibbetts because he was the one that sexually assaulted and killed her. Now, the one witness apparently was described as very emotional and likely intoxicated, and at least one investigator dismissed the information as not credible. But both accounts were forwarded to the Rivera prosecutors, who stated that they notified the lawyers near the end of the trial. The defense lawyers say they continued with the trial because they had rested their case and didn't get more detailed information until after the verdict. Because obviously there's an ongoing duty of a prosecutor to provide exculpatory information even during trial or after trial if they become aware of it. The prosecutors turned it over, but they were very dismissive of it, and they believe that nothing is going to happen. Obviously, the issue is there some new evidence that wasn't available to the defense? I mean, they'd already rested. You get this information, you say, what do you do with it? You don't have time to investigate it. You don't have time to subpoena witnesses. It's going to be interesting. Clearly, it's a case of new evidence. I think it would be under motion for like 35, kind of a 35C, basically a motion for a new trial, and a motion for a new trial based upon new information or new evidence that wasn't available at the time of it. Now, the interesting thing is a lot of people thought that Rivera's statements in court were just crazy, but he had given that statement to the police early on, and his attorneys stated basically that, hey, that's his story, and he was sticking to it the whole way through. May not have made much sense, may not have been what we think, kind of every day, oh, that wouldn't happen. I mean, who goes out and picks up young ladies and put them into a sex trafficking organization, and then, oh my gosh, he becomes so big, so we'll go out and, dump her in a field. But that stuff happens. I mean, it does. And so the question is the judge going to grant a new trial? It'll be interesting to see. There's some forensic evidence. Obviously, like I said, Rivera's said his attorney stated he never wavered from that story from the moment they began representing him back in 2018. They noted that testing the blood found in his trunk showed DNA from people other than Tibbetts who haven't been identified. So you just, never know who was there or not. But it's interesting, to say the least, and apparently the people in the great state of Iowa are a little shocked. But the court's doing the right thing by having a hearing. So we'll have to wait and see how that turns out. Hopefully we'll be able to cover it live, because that would be rather interesting for sure. And could you imagine if he got a new trial? I mean, you got to admit, that would be interesting. That would be interesting, because you have an alternate suspect. You have a guy making statements, confessions. Yes, there's some evidentiary issues, but, the DAs are going to say, you can't give any weight and credibility. But you have witnesses who have never met that say the same person was bragging about doing it, right? And when do people brag about doing things? When they're intoxicated. Doesn't mean it's not true, just means they were intoxicated. So we'll have to wait and see. All right, and let's get now to our dumb criminal contestant of the day, and then we'll talk about your questions, because that's what we're doing here on Tuesday night. Our dumb criminal contestant of the day is a teenager, 18-year-old Hollister Tryon. Now, Miss Tryon is being accused of unlawfully accessing a computer database. And what did she do? Did she go in and maybe change her grades? Maybe give herself a 4.5 GPA on a 4.0 scale, saying that she's taken all those AP classes? No, she went straight to the yearbook files and changed another student's quote. You know how they put a student's quote under their name for their senior picture? Well, she changed the quote and put in one by Adolf Hitler and attributed it to George Floyd. Certainly a social faux pas indeed. And, you probably don't want that under your yearbook, quoting Hitler, and then also having it be misquoted to George Floyd. She changed a couple of other things, but she now has a pair of felony computer crime charges. Oh, that's right. Zarnoff, she edited another one to include drug references and the name of Zarnoff, one of the Boston Marathon bombers, to another individual. And so for that, This young lady won't be graduating high school with just a high school diploma on her way to college. No, she is getting a possible felony conviction to get life started. No motive as to why she wanted to do this, but she broke into the school computer. So, Miss Tryon, you are a dumb criminal contestant of the day. And as you may have noticed, I was taking a sip of water from the Crime Talk mug, where you can get all your merchandise as well. We've got some cool, my personal favorite, lawyer, lawyer, lawyer. That t-shirt cracks me up. It's the best. And we play that little clip, but I think Frank's computer is still in the shop. So we can't do that, but we'll have it very soon. Anyway, if you want some Crime Talk merchandise, go do that. All right. On to your questions. All right. Now, remember, we don't ask for super chats, but if you highlight them, they are certainly much easier for me to read and more likely to answer your question because I see it. There's a lot of content going by here, a lot of questions going by. I'll try to answer them all. Now, for those of you who also maybe joined us for the first time, immediately after this, we will do our Patreon show. Now, what's different, people say? Well, you have to have a link to get to the Patreon. What does that cost? Well, $5 a month is the minimum level. You get the link, you get to chat with us. We have a phone number. You can call in and we can have a conversation. And tonight we have several questions that have come in. We said, hey, tonight's our Patreon question night. And some of our Patreon members, for example, we're going to answer, what the hell is impeachment? What's the foundation required for that? We're going to do that. Well, we're going to do it on our Patreon show. Have a little discussion about videotaping trials and, live streaming trials. I think hopefully it'll be very, very interesting. So let's get started. Have I missed anything, Frank and Julie of the wonderful Crime Talk staff? I think we've covered all that so far. All right. Let's see if we have some questions here. The first got to answer. Everybody says hi. That's what I like about our little community here. Everybody's like, hey, how are you? And even on the Patreon stuff, everybody's like, hey, how are you? I'm checking in. It's great. Greetings from Texas, Miss Connie Joe. Listening to Madonna, borderline waiting for the show. Wow, this is okay. We've got. Don't forget to hit the like button. Yes, please do. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe and please, tell your friend, share this. Really would like to get to 1 million subscribers. And although we are proud of our success, what we've done here, I think we're 184,000 subscribers, I think, a little more. And we've gone over 36 million views in our time, which is, nothing to shag wave a stick at. But I mean, we have a lot of work to do. I would love to get that much in a month. That would be absolutely amazing. And, we'll see. Can I get a Crime Talk mug from Mexico, Lula? You're from Mexico. Yes, you can order a mug at the link below. Take you right there. Just Jimmy, my buddy and I crashed his daddy's Porsche into our high school and really got what amounted to a slap on the wrist. Well, just Jimmy, I don't know how old you are, but we got away with a lot of stuff too back when we were younger. Stuff that they would just say, what are you doing? And if you do it again, you're not going to graduate. We're going to call your parents. But there was never anything that was going to cause you to get arrested. I remember, and the statute of limitations has run, but one night, maybe for example, there was you always have that one dean of for the students that's, he's the enforcer. He's like a vice principal, and he's the disciplinarian. And maybe hypothetically, a couple of people with a large truck, maybe picked up an outhouse out in the middle of a farmer's field, because where we were, you didn't have to go that far out there, and maybe dropped off that old outhouse and put it in the center of the high school with the dean's name on it, putting his office on there. Now, that little antic prank today would probably get you charged with a litany of charges. And they kind of knew who it was, but they didn't do anything to us. Like I said, statute of limitations are run. What are they going to do? Let me not graduate or something? Right. But so it's just a different world out there. Things that they would simply drive you home and tell your parents at the door, you can't do that anymore, because you give the one kid a break. Next thing you know, they go off and they commit a much more serious offense. The police officer is like, I'm not risking my retirement, my pension on some kid that's doing something. Like, I'm going to report it, write it up, let the courts sort it out. That's above my pay grade, so to speak. They don't let them do that. So, yeah. That's when the guy gets arrested and he starts saying, lawyer, lawyer, lawyer. Yes. I'm telling you. Oh, I was going to tell you about my day. I'll keep looking through these questions. Let me tell you about my day. Donna Lane, I have that t-shirt and I love it. And it's seriously, lawyer, lawyer, lawyer. And I think it says Crime Talk on the back or something like that. It's really good. I should probably order a couple for me as well. So you can tell things are getting back to normal again, okay? Because I didn't get into the office today till about 3:15-ish today. Busy day. Normally, for the last year and a half, it's come in, do some Zoom calls, sit at your desk, you can work while you're doing, it was much more efficient. And now courts are making you go back for sentencing. I had to go back for sentencing today on a federal matter. It got reversed at the 10th Circuit on a couple of issues, and it is what it is. It is what it is. You win, and sometimes you lose. And you still lose. Anyway, so I did that, get to the courthouse bright and early, go talk to the client. He's in the holding cell. This is going to be great. I'll be done. I'll be in and out by 9:30. This will be wonderful, because I have a 10 o'clock meeting with some prosecutors on a homicide case. Just a couple blocks away. Won't be a problem, right? So immediately go do the sentencing. And this judge, I like this judge. He's a great judge, but he's a talker. Man, is he a talker. He likes to talk his way through what he's doing on the record. And you're just like, good to go, Judge. Good to go. Let's move along. And so something that should have taken no more than 30 minutes, but that's okay, because, it's my client's day in court, sentencing, determine his future, will take as long as possible. And the beautiful thing about federal court that you don't often get in state court is that you're the only thing on the docket. Okay? State court, Monday morning docket. Let's set 80 matters at 8:30. Makes no sense. Can you imagine scheduling all your customers at 8:30 if you were a court? No. You wouldn't do it. Inefficient. Federal court, still one matter set at a time, unless it's multiple co-defendants. One matter set at a time. It's wonderful. The judges have been briefed. They have law clerks, staff. The judge knows what's going on. He's read the motions. It's all done on the paper, because in state court, prosecutors they don't file anything. You file the motion, you show up to the motions hearing, and they don't have to do or type anything up and respond. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. In federal court, the prosecutors have to justify it, do research just like we do, have to file the motion. So anyway, go to the motions hearing today. This is good to go. Getting done, it's like 10 o'clock. And I text my associate and say, hey, I'll be right over. And then, of course, I had to explain to the family what just took place, which took like 15 minutes. And then, of course, I try to shoot over to the district attorney's office today. And a little drive that shouldn't have taken just a couple of minutes, it doubled, tripled in time. Why? Because they had streets blocked off for the All-Star game. All right. And we can talk about that lady and her compatriots that got arrested. And I mean, just what a really, really bizarre thing. So I do that. Then we have some information to go talk with our client about. So immediately rush over to the jail, talk to the client. And I'm like, oh my, I got this other matter on a federal client that's supposed to meet with the probation officer, the person that does all the reports. And I literally have to I email my assistant and say, please tell me that is on the phone, or do I have to be there in person? And I normally don't go to it, but this particular client gets very nervous, always worried about he's going to say something wrong. And he's just, and I don't mean this in a bad way, he's just not a very sophisticated person. So I was like, fine, I'll be there. Yes, it was in person. That took 2 hours. Then almost another hour, 45-minute drive back. I didn't get in until 3:15. 3:15. Needless to say, I could have whipped out a quick video, but I didn't want to do that to Frank. So yeah. All right. So that was my day. So it's crazy. Let's see here. All right. Well, let's take a quick recess. I'll be right back. Please go to CrimeTalkSearch.com, sign up for a background subscription service. You'll be happy you did. If there's anyone out there you were ever curious about what was in their background, now is the time to do it. If you're going to get involved with somebody, now is the time to do it. When you go to CrimeTalkSearch.com, you put in the name, literally millions of public records are searched, and a report is generated. And it's going to give you a report. If they have multiple social media accounts, you're going to find it. If they have multiple phone numbers, multiple email addresses, it's going to be found. And more importantly, you're going to get information regarding criminal history. Hopefully the person you're searching has none whatsoever. But if it's there, it's going to be found. You're going to get everything you'd want to know, whether you're going into business or whether you're going into a personal relationship. You're going to be able to find out the information you want to know. So go to CrimeTalkSearch.com, sign up today. You'll be happy you did. All right, we're back after that quick recess. All right, let's go right to the questions here. Your opinion on Summer Wells. She's the young girl, was she 5 years old? And I saw something today in regards to that, where the dad came out and basically said, yeah, I believe Summer's no longer with us. That's one of the things that police are often trained upon when they refer to the deceased person, that the person is saying they don't know anything about it, is that they are referring to them in the past tense. And anyway, he said that they went, he thinks that they'll see each other basically in the afterlife. But he stated that both he and his wife passed a polygraph test. Now, I don't know. We've talked about polygraph tests before. It really just depends on the individuals that are doing the polygraph. But most polygraphers will tell you that a polygraph is really nothing more than a tool for interrogation to get people talking. Remember Chris Watts? Oh, yeah, I'll take the polygraph. Oh, yeah, you betcha. You betcha. I passed, right? Oh, no, you failed. You didn't just fail. Like, you crashed and burned and blew up on impact. That's how bad you failed. Why don't you tell me what happened? Because it just doesn't make any sense. Okay, fine, I did it. It's a tool of interrogation. Most detectives will use have your client come and take a polygraph. We're willing to take a polygraph. The reality of it is you can't. They're not admissible in court because, well, they're really not that reliable. They're not reliable at all. So you take it for what it's worth. So I don't know what happens. I mean, obviously, the more time goes by, what are we now, 3 weeks into Summer Wells' disappearance, I think, and nobody's been charged. And, this is the kind of thing that, we talk about. You see more and more of it lately, but they've got usually some evidence to say that they believe somebody is deceased. What do you charge the parents for at this point if they're somebody of interest? Normally it's, hey, the last person with him, probably the one that did it, right? I think so. But, was she abducted? There's some evidence that happened. It appears as though dad may have some issues, perhaps with alcohol, becomes one of those angry drunks. You just don't know. And that's really what it comes down to. And like I said, on this show, we like to stick with facts. And remember, probable cause is a very low standard to achieve when it comes to getting a warrant. But you still have to have probable cause. Probable cause. A reasonable person would believe that a crime was committed and the defendant had something to do with it. Super low standard, right? That's enough to get you arrested. That's enough to keep the case going forward. Not enough for the standard of proof that the prosecution is being held to, which is proof beyond a reasonable doubt. But it's enough to get the case started. So if the police don't have probable cause, like I said, one of the things we talked about this, remember I can't remember, did we do it on the Patreon show where we talked about kind of the little loved thing, right? You have to show the loved. You have to show, the location. Where did this event take place? What offense has been committed? Who's the victim? Then they have to show who's going to be the one IDing the person that apparently did the wrong thing. And then obviously the prosecution has to prove the date and the time. Not specifically, but, on or about a specific time period. But they need to be able to say that is the defendant, that is the bad man, that is the bad woman that committed this crime. And if they don't have that yet, you have to give people the presumption of innocence. That's what you have to do. And I understand it's a 5-year-old. It's a child. And I'm telling you, I do not get, and why does somebody, if you're going to get upset, go outside, punch a tree, hit a wall, do whatever you want to do. But why do you have to take it out on a little kid? All right? The old adage, pick on somebody your own size, right? Well, no. I mean, getting beat up like that or beating up a child, one of the most cowardly things that one could possibly do. They're just a kid. No matter what they're doing, no matter how loud they're yelling. I remember when my son, he had colic. I remember I'm coming home late. It's coming from class, and literally the wife is like, here you go. And you had to hold him, and you're just like, will you please go to sleep because I need to sleep or get some more work done or something. Just please go to sleep. And you become frustrated. But we never did anything that would be like, shaking baby or harming him. So I just don't get it. And it makes sense to look at the parents because they're the ones there. But there's also some evidence that maybe somebody snatched this young child, Summer Wells. And I don't know what happened. And neither do the police. The police may have their suspicions. They may have their hunches. But remember, the prosecutor, even if they have their suspicion, their hunch, cannot ethically file charges unless they believe at the time of filing charges that they can prove each and every element of the offense charge beyond a reasonable doubt. They cannot ethically file a case thinking, well, I can get probable cause and I'll work on my reasonable doubt later. That's not the ethical standard that the prosecutors have to do. Now, do they do it? I'm not going to say they don't. I'm not going to point to a specific example where they did, but let's be realistic. It's just the way it is. So Summer Wells case, it's, once again, you hate these things. Look at the little West boys, right? Out in California. Nothing. And they disappeared, what was that? November, I think. If I'm getting that right, November. It was maybe even before. It was right before Christmas, I think. And no new evidence, because they have to. In most cases, if they're going to prove, child abuse resulting in death, a homicide case, you gotta produce the body, because you have to show that the defendant is responsible for the death of another person. And if you can't show that they're actually deceased, well, you can't prove that element, right? How do you know they just didn't run away? How do you know they weren't taken by a family member and living somewhere? You just do not know. And that's what they have to be able to prove. So I understand your frustration with the Summer Wells case. I do. I appreciate that, but that's just the way it is. December 21st, blessed and highly favored. Thank you for that answer. See, our subscribers, our viewers, they're so smart. They're so smart. The dogs would make noise, and the two women outside would have heard and seen random abduction. I get it. They just need to, they have to be able to prove the case. They have to have a body, it's, Scott, I hope your significant other makes you rest more. Do I look tired today? Do I look tired? I don't know. I had a busy weekend. It was a big birthday weekend, and a big weekend it was. I'm telling you, the lovely Miss Kristen came through. She coordinated the arrival of my daughter to surprise me that she flew in for my birthday. My son couldn't get away because he had stuff to do for his job in the military, and I get it. I mean, it's just another birthday. We'll have another one next year, right? And then we ordered, I think I've mentioned this to people, we ordered Joe's, and this is not Joe's from Joe's Crab Shack. This is Joe's Stone Crab in Miami, where they ship in stone crab claws and the big crab legs. And it's the best. And they send this mustard sauce with it. Oh, it's to die for. And then we went to the Avett Brother concert on Tuesday night. Great band. You should check it out. They're just really, really good. And then the other night, I watched the little documentary. It's on Netflix. It's called May It Last, about the Avett Brothers. Very interesting. Just kind of just humble guys playing some music, talking about what's on their mind. Okay, good. No, you don't look tired. Good. Let's see. Okay, Pop Coats. If the people involved don't talk and the body's not recovered and forensic evidence not discovered, then the case stays cold. That's right. And the longer it goes, yes, that's it. If people don't talk, but we have a right against self-incrimination under the Fifth Amendment. You don't have to talk to the police. They're accusing you. Mandy wants to talk about the Redwine trial. I haven't been watching the Redwine trial. It's going down on in Durango, Colorado. And Mr. Redwine is accused of killing his son. And basically, Redwine and his wife are divorced. He had his son. I think he was 8 at the time. I think it was 8, maybe 11. Anyway, the prosecution's theory of the case is that dad killed son because son confronted dad about pictures of him in ladies' underwear and diapers and weird sexual fetishes that may involve feces or something. And then child disappears. A couple years go by. They find like a skull. They find some other fragments. And the one thing I did see is one of the forensic examiners said, yeah, the injury to the skull could be consistent with like an animal puncture type wound. I think that's what I recall watching briefly. And I don't know. But I've had several people say that the defense attorney not exactly proving himself well. And according here to Mandy, the judge has been so frustrated with the defense counsel. He said, quote, "I don't even know what to say to you anymore." It's trial lessons 101. Well, yeah. Now, I thought that the Office of the Public Defender was representing Mr. Redwine, and I thought that he had the office head that was down there. But apparently that's not the case, because the attorney that I thought that was representing Mr. Redwine, and maybe he had to get off that case at some point, was a very experienced trial attorney. And just because the defense objects and the judge overrules those objections doesn't mean that it's wrong. I mean, I had a case where I just kept objecting. I literally objected to every question, nearly every question throughout the entire trial, because I thought that it was inadmissible. The judge disagreed with me. He even called me up to the bench and said, "Mr. Reisch, I will give you a standing objection to every question." And I said, "Judge, thank you, but no thank you, because I've been burned by appellate courts in the past and said you didn't make a timely objection, regardless of the court saying you have a standing objection." And so a lawyer has a duty, an obligation to object to evidence that he believes is not legally competent and coming in. And I objected. And the judge was sick and tired of me. The jury was sick and tired of me. But guess what? Yes, my client was convicted. He was sentenced to a lengthy term in the Colorado Department of Corrections. And what happened on appeal? That's right. It got reversed because I literally objected to just about every question that came out. And you know what? The prosecutor or the appellate attorney for the state, do you know what their argument was? Well, he didn't object to every question, and so therefore he waived it because he didn't object to that one. And the court's like, he objected to just about everything. We got the gist. He was probably taking a sip of water because his throat was too dry to object anymore. Okay? And that's why you object. We've all been there. If you've been a defense attorney, I've seen prosecutors have tough days where they can't get a piece of evidence in. And, the jury's like, "This is what our tax dollars are funding. Are you kidding me?" Boom. And they kick them out, kick the defendant out for not guilty. So it just depends. And I haven't watched the trial, but just because the judge is getting frustrated, you know what my advice is to that attorney? Do what you think you need to do to protect the record. Bottom line. Now, if there's issues about evidentiary issues, inexperience, hey, that's on the attorney. I'll put it right there. But that attorney has an obligation. That attorney has a duty to present a defense. And just because the judge is frustrated because he thinks that maybe the defendant may be guilty, why are we wasting our time? Well, guess what, Judge? If you can't be an fair and impartial judge in the case, then maybe you should recuse yourself and send it over to somebody else because the trial's taking too long. I'd say get over it, Judge. And the judge also has a duty not to show that frustration to the jurors. Quick side story. I know some people are like, oh God, here comes another story. True story. I had a case where it was a drug deal. And this was like, oh my God, so many years ago. I can't even remember. But I was like, the client's like, man, I didn't sell drugs. That guy did. I'm like, well, is that guy going to come into court and testify that he was the one selling the drugs? And the guy's like, yeah. So I'm like, okay. So, the guy comes, he's going to come in to testify. This is going to be great. Of course, he's got some Fifth Amendment issues. The judge, is kind of curious of me at the time. Like, who is this kid? Who is this kid thinking he's going to get in here, right? And do this. And I'm cross-examining the snitch in the case, and he's got this felony conviction and this felony conviction, and he has shoplifting convictions that are misdemeanors, but they are crimes of moral turpitude that I can legally, under the rules, cross-examine on. And the judge jumps up. It's like, Mr. Reisch, how dare you besmirch the good character of the witness? And I'm literally like, the witness has got like 8 felony convictions? Like, really, Judge? He's good character? Okay, fine. The big moment. My client's friend is going to come in and say, he's the one that sold the drugs. He's going to take the case. He gets up there and the judge is like, he's not testifying. He's got Fifth Amendment. Guy's like, I understand that. I've got an attorney. I want to testify. I don't want that man going down there. The judge is beside himself. His face is turning red. I mean, it looks like one of those cartoons with like steam coming out of his ears. The judge is so upset that, my guy, who maybe have lots of convictions for things involving illegal narcotics, and the guy gets up and testifies. And the judge, I mean, he was being so rude to me. How dare you besmirch him? Mr. Right, I mean, just as rude as can be. Jury comes back not guilty. I'm like, yeah. And as we're standing there and the jurors are exiting by, one of the jurors, a nice lady, and leans over the bar and puts her hand on my client's shoulder, and I'm right between my client there, right hands on the shoulder, and says, "We weren't going to let him get you, baby." Referring to the judge, right? So sometimes when the judge is not being fair because maybe he doesn't like the attorney or he doesn't like the way the attorney's trying the case, sometimes it can say, hey, what is the deal? Why is this judge not giving this guy a fair shake? So it can cut both ways. Like I said, so the Redwine trial, haven't watched it, but just, you just never know. All right, looks like we have a super chat here. Let's see here. 1999. You're amazing. Well, thanks, Amy. I appreciate that. How to score? I'm sorry, I don't know how. Scott, allude a car taken by Ellie. Did Scott already allude to a car taken by law enforcement in the Murdaugh case? Yes, Lion Swimmer, I did. And they reopened the case of Stephen Smith. So that is Summer Wells is being televised on Court TV. Happy anniversary, Scott. Thank you. I appreciate that. Love your stories. Maybe a live evening of your courtroom stories. Well, I certainly would do that. But you know how I would do that? I would have to bring in a round table of attorneys, and we could probably talk for hours. Oh, yeah? Well, wait until you hear this story, okay? Nothing gets me, attorneys sitting around talking about cases and judges. It's a hoot because you just can't make the stuff up. Kat, you should broadcast live from court if you can get permission to do so. Unfortunately, in Colorado, we cannot. And I'm a firm believer that all courtrooms should basically be on a live feed that anybody could watch at any given time. It's easy when everybody knows when the cameras are going to be on. They're real nice and what have you. But I think it's, I think they should broadcast it to the world to see. From the interview room, kept the pressure and brought that back. Let's see here. Once the DNA testing results are made, what happens to the DNA records? Will it be kept in the system permanently? This is from Ruzy85. They'll be kept. I mean, yes. Once that data is put in there, they have if it's involved in a source, they'll put it in there as an unknown DNA, and it'll go into the CODIS system. And basically when they think they get a match, just about everyone who's convicted of a felony goes to prison. Their DNA gets uploaded into the DNA database system, and they look for matches. I've had old murder cases, where it comes back, and 20 years later, it comes back. Had to be able to try to explain a good reason for that. I can tell you one case that didn't quite work out that way. I mean, it was a bad case. Got a great transcript of it, though. It would make a great podcast. And I've tried to think how I could do this. Maybe literally have, because I got the whole trial transcript for the appeal, right? So it's got all the bench conferences talking about, we could change the names to protect the innocent, like the jurors and things like that. But literally just have people read the testimony. I mean, it was a fun trial, even though he lost. I had a co-counsel that was a great guy, but I'm never, ever, ever going to give up closing argument ever again. Never going to do it. Never, ever, ever. Never going to do it. Co-counsel can have openings, but I always get closings. That's just the way it is. I asked about the sentence. Let's see here. I don't think it was ignored. The chat goes by fast. Let's see here. Let's see if I can do. So true regarding attorney's office. You're going to hear a gazillion times around that round table. That would be good. I was a law student a long time ago. Now my baby wants to become a lawyer. Factual breakdown. I'm telling you, fortunately, both of my kids at this point have never had any desire to become a lawyer. And it's probably because they had to see it growing up. The long hours, the client issues, the weekends, late nights, etc. Kind of always on call, so to speak. So fortunately, I've never had to deal with that. But if somebody, Okie dokie, did a $25 super chat there. Thank you, Scott, mods, Julie, Frank. Appreciate all our mods. Big shout out to our mods. Big shout out to Julie, Frank. They keep everything going, because when I'm running around doing court, who do you think is doing all this important stuff? Not me. I just sit up here and look pretty. Anyway, so yeah, I mean, boy, we could do a whole show on this. Should you go to law school? Wow. And it depends on what you want to do. And I know so many people, obviously I know lots of lawyers that have been lawyers for a long time. And some of them, can't wait for their kids to become lawyers and join the practice and what have you. But a lot of them these days, it doesn't seem like that's really the case. It's a tough business. And I had a mentor that, started practicing law back in the 70s, early 70s. And, so he's going on 50 years of practicing law, and he still looks like he's about 45. Amazing. Great trial attorney, huge success. But he said, back when he first started practicing law, people paid their bills. They paid their attorneys. They listened to their attorneys. They didn't go second guess everything on the internet. And he referred to it as, quote, printing money, unquote, because, you billed, nobody questioned your bill. They trusted attorneys. In these days, everybody knew somebody who had a case just like this, and why isn't their case getting dismissed? I'm like, well, why don't you go hire the attorney that did it for this buddy to this buddy to that buddy and have them dismiss your case? I encourage you to do so, because each case is different. And just like everybody thinks they're a doctor because they have a symptom, they go to WebMD. Everybody Googles something and they're an expert in the law. And, there's that great, I think it's like a coffee mug. It said, don't substitute your Google search for my law degree. And not that I have all the answers, or any attorney does, but we've got a little more experience. Doesn't mean I'm always right. I mean, hey, I'll be the first one. I told people that, I have to go look that up. I know the law has changed. I need to go look that specific issue up. So, would you want your kid to go to law school? I don't know. Depends on what they want to do. Is it worth taking out $200,000, $250,000 in loans to go to law school these days? I mean, you got to think about that. What do you want to do? The world has changed. The big law firms hiring people right out of law school. I saw an article, some big law firm, I think it was in New York, starting, young associate at $200,000 a year. But what they don't know is that, you may make $200,000 a year, but they own you. All right. You're going to be billing. You better be billing probably 60 to 80 hours per week. And, that's billable. That doesn't mean you're not there. Just because you're there for 60 hours a week doesn't mean that's all billable. Some things you can't bill. You getting up to speed, administrative things, something you can't bill. So if you're billing 60 hours a week, you're probably working, 120 hours a week, 100 hours a week. So there's things like that. I would tell anybody to go to law school, go find out the particular area of law you think you want to do, and go talk to somebody who actually does it. Go observe it. I knew many a person in law school that got to their final year and was like, I know I've just spent the last 3 years busting my ass, reading cases and cases and cases, being, humiliated by law professors, like in the paper chase, engaging in the Socratic method of law school, worrying about things, huge debt, but I'm not sure I want to be a lawyer anymore. And you're just kind of like, really? Like what? But then I know attorneys that went to law school, never took the bar exam. They're very successful. It's a good general education, gives you good experience as to kind of the stuff of the world. But, I would tell somebody today, unless mom or dad are paying that tuition, what do you want to do? It seems like everybody goes to law school. Maybe I was kind of an exception to the rule. Everybody goes to law school because they want to change the world, fight for injustice, save the environment, all those noble things. And then you get to the real world, and it's like, whatever. I remember I was working as a clerk, in another story here, and then we'll go, all right? But I was working as a law clerk at the time, and there was a really smart guy, and he was an attorney there, and I won't mention his name, but he's general counsel for a big company these days. And I'm sitting there, and he was writing this report. It was some sort of oil and gas thing, report on environmental laws, blah, blah, blah. And all of a sudden, I see man I consider my mentor walking by, and he's kind of gruff, and he has this big report, this big paper that the attorney had written, and he was proud of it. He was working and footnoting and doing all that blue book stuff. Blue book is citations. How do you properly cite the case? Really? Like, who cares? There's people that actually go to law school and say, I can't wait to get on the law review so that I can check cites for people. Are you kidding me? That's how you want to spend your weekends in law school, checking cites for law review papers? Anyway, so the attorney walks in. You can hear it, throw it down on the desk, and he says, clients don't like to pay for law review articles. I was like, ooh, because he was so proud of that work, right? And at the end of the day, that's what it comes down to. Clients are going to want the correct answer quickly for the least amount of money. Bottom line, right? And no matter how noble everybody wants to be when they become a lawyer, like, oh, I'm going to run off and work for legal aid and this and that is going to be great. I'm going to help all the poor people of the world and blah, blah, blah. Okay. And then the funding gets cut and they don't have a spot for that attorney. Okay. I hate to say it, but it all revolves around money, right? Whether you're hiring a team of lawyers charging you $1,000 an hour, or you're getting the guy that is doing a simple case for you for flat fee of $1,000, it comes down to the money. And that's the reality of it that most people don't necessarily want to hear when they're thinking about going to law school. Do you want to be broke? Do you want to be poor? Where you have a student loan payment that is greater than your mortgage payment? Or maybe it's your rent payment because you can't qualify for a mortgage because your student loans are too high. So I would, if you're thinking about going to law school, go for the right reasons And but understand, at the end of the day, it's a business. It's just like doctors have that rude awakening when they, become a doctor. They're going to save the world. Next thing you know, they got to worry about billing. It's a business, and you can't help. And this is the hardest thing that I had to learn when I first opened my practice, because when I was, doing defense work originally, I was in the military. I had an endless supply of clients that were coming in. It was amazing. They just came in. And then when you start your practice, you're thinking, well, they're just all going to come in. Well, they don't all come in. And then when they do, not everybody has enough money to do it. As a general rule of thumb, it's better to have not done the work and not got paid than to have done the work and not got paid. Okay? So early on, I think I'm setting up my practice. I want to help people. That's what lawyers do. We solve problems. We fight injustices. Well, you can't pay your own bills on solving other people's problems and not getting paid for it. So my advice is that if you go to law school or your children want to go to law school, understand at the end of the day, it is a business. And a lot of people just don't, realize that. They just think you're just going to get out there and everybody thinks you're going to be making a big salary as a starting attorney. Not the case. Not the case. Because most people don't go to work at big law firms that are paying $200,000 a year starting for an associate that really knows little to nothing. Like, how do I file something? How do I go to the clerk's office? What do I do? I mean, those little things in life, the important things. Factual breakdown. Glad to know that you like Joe's. I love Joe's. Joe's Stone Crab. Now, I've been to every Joe's. You got the one in Florida, Miami. You got one in D.C., Chicago, and Las Vegas. But the one I hadn't been to was Joe's. And I think I came up on my little Facebook feed like 3 years ago, 4 years, maybe it was 5 years ago. 5 years ago, I was in Miami at the Joe's down there. And a group of people I was with said, hey, he has been to every Joe's. He's hit them all. Could you do something special for him? And what did they do? They gave me the little Joe's crab with little encrusted little diamonds. They're fake, but but the waiters wear them there. And so they gave me a Joe's Stone Crab little pin, and I still have it because it's from Joe's. Sylvia, Scott, Kim Kardashian is going to save all the wrongfully convicted criminals, which is honorable work. She can do it. She has all the money in the world. She could do it for free. But she needs a law degree first, unless she's going to start her own, foundation. And you know what? It's just, and I understand California, you can be mentored and go to, and I understand she has some very smart attorneys that were mentoring her. And let's face it, she has a very busy schedule. But, between Barbary and attorneys basically telling you, hey, this is how it works. If I could teach law school these days, I would break it down so quickly. You would understand it just like that. Most of it is common sense, right? Criminal law. Don't take things of others without permission. Otherwise, it's theft. Don't go in the home of another person or a structure with the intent to commit a crime therein. That is burglary. The different levels of homicide, rather simple. Contracts, we can knock that out really, really quick. Torts, right? Easy. I wish somebody explained it to me this easy when I was there. Negligence, if it's reasonably foreseeable, if you look at something and say, wow, I could cause some damage by that. Or if I engage in, texting on my phone, I could be distracted and hit somebody in the car. You have a duty not to do that, right? You have a duty not to hit the car. That's negligence. Hey, maybe I should shovel that walk. I slipped on it. Somebody else could slip on it too. That's reasonably foreseeable, right? And then duty, breach, causation, that but for this act or not acting, this injury happened. And then you have damages. Bam, you have a personal injury case. Why do they always have to make everything so complicated in law school? I do not know why. Most things in law are rather straightforward. It's common sense if you really think about it. If you sign a contract and you breach the contract, you owe them for the breach, but you have a duty to mitigate your damages. You have a rental property and the renter says, I am going to move out, and they have 6 months left on their lease. Well, you can sue them for the 6 months, but you have a duty to mitigate your damages by trying to re-rent it to keep your damages down. You can't just say, well, I'm not going to re-rent it. I'm going to go get my money from that guy, right? Simple contract law. It's not that difficult. People could do it. Law schools charge too much money. I really believe that. It's kind of a protectionism racket. Not going to lie. Once I got on board, I said, pull the ladders up. It's just us now. That's good. But the problem is they just keep coming and coming. And, I think Colorado, we admit like 2,000 lawyers a year. I mean, maybe that's because there's so many that are just like, I'm done. I'm out of here. Yeah. I know Scott wants Kim Kardashian to be his partner. If she would like to start up a not-for-profit organization, I would be more than happy to investigate cold cases. But they already have something called that. It's called the Innocence Project. And they get, thousands of letters a year. There's only so many there's only so many cases that they can do. Amy says, you're going to be slinging divorce papers and child support starting out. Yeah. And Lion Swimmer, law associates are slaves. I thought paralegals do all the little things. Yeah. No. They dump bodies. Danger, Will Robinson. They dump bodies 2 blocks away from my home. Jeez. Yeah. The bar is a scam. I wanted to do probate law and elder law, but then I had kids and never finished school. I might go back, but baby is only one. Baby's only one in elementary. Yeah. Well, if you want to do it, go for it. Like I said, just know what you want to do, because it's a lot of money to spend. It really, really is. Scott, are you familiar with Don Knight, who is representing Richard Glossip pro bono wrongfully conviction in Oklahoma? I think if that's the Don Knight here in town, I know of him. I wouldn't say that we're friends. I think we've met occasionally. I think he was a part-time judge as well at one point. Oh, yeah. See, Courtney Rose, my dad actually did it backwards. He did criminal law, then family law. If there's one area of law I will never do, give me a good old-fashioned person accused of doing horrible things any day over a divorce. Don't do it. Somebody calls in, I got a divorce. Scott, I trust you. Don't do it. I'll pay you whatever you want me to. Don't do them. Nope. Send them away. I've done 2 divorces in 26 years, not counting my own because I didn't do my own. But I'm telling you, I will never do them again. They are the worst thing ever. It's not about dividing up the property, splitting it down the middle. It's simply about how to hurt the other party. I just won't do it. Won't do it. We were trying to get tenants out of our house and was dismissed without prejudice. What does that even mean? Dismissed means the case is dismissed. Without prejudice means that you can refile the case. If it was dismissed with prejudice, that means you could not refile the case. More than likely, you probably didn't get the person served, or there was some imperfection, or you didn't meet the court's case management order or something along those lines. And that's why they dismissed it early on. Thank you, Alexandra Capra. Thank you for that super chat. Question, ever been threatened? Yes. What is your most bizarre case you've ever taken? There are so many. I swear there's stuff you just literally I can't believe it. I think the one case that comes to mind, whereas I have a client He was already a registered sex offender. He meets a young lady who's, 20 years older than him. She has kids. She gets divorced. Daughters make allegations that my client did something inappropriate. Dad hears about it, gets upset, goes over, shoots mom in front of the kids. She dies. He is charged with murder. We're getting set for trial. Right before trial, complaining witness girls say they made it all up. My client's case dismissed because of that lie. Well, both of her parents are gone because once he found out that she had made it up, he hung himself in the county jail. And obviously mom had passed away as well. So because of that one little lie, it just destroyed a whole family and almost ruined my client's life as well. This is referring to the Summers case. Went back up. Let's see here. All right. Wow. I can't believe we already went so long. Jeez. All right. Wow. We got to go do some Patreon, people. So if you haven't become a Patreon member, we'll continue this conversation. And it's Ask Scott Night. And I'm going to talk about this heinous thing that I received today as well. Oh, all right. Thanks for watching. Have a wonderful night, and we'll see you next time on Crime Talk.